The bridge of the Harmonious Judgment hummed with quiet efficiency as Fleet Commander Velatros reviewed the day's patrol reports. His forearms moved across different consoles with practiced ease, each limb performing a separate task. The Covenant warship had been stationed at the edge of charted space for 3 months now, monitoring the border between known territories and the mysterious regions beyond. Nothing interesting ever happened out here. That was the point. Commander, his sensor officer called out, breaking the monotonous routine. We have detected an unknown vessel at coordinates 794 Mark 6. Distance 40,000 kilometers. Velatros felt his secondary heart skip a beat. Unknown vessels were rare. His people, the Quellans, had been part of the Covenant Alliance for over 200 years. In that time, they had cataloged nearly every spacefaring species in this sector. An unknown ship meant either pirates or a completely new species. What can you tell me about it? Velatros asked, moving to the main display screen. The sensor officer's tentacles twitched nervously as she processed the data. The vessel is drifting, Commander. Propulsion appears offline. Initial scans show primitive fusion drives and what looks like kinetic weapons. Very outdated technology. Pirates, Velatros suggested. Unlikely, sir. The design doesn't match any known pirate configurations. This appears to be a military vessel, but the technology level is at least 50 years behind current Covenant standards. Velatros leaned forward, his interest growing. Show me. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a grainy image of the unknown ship. It was roughly cylindrical with angular protrusions along its hull. Dark scorch marks covered its surface and several sections showed clear evidence of weapons damage. Atmosphere vented slowly from at least 3 visible hull breaches. By the stars, breathed Velatros. That ship has been through a battle. Confirmed, Commander. Extensive damage detected across all sections. Hull integrity at 62%. Multiple breaches. Life support systems operating at only 23% efficiency. Any life signs? The sensor officer paused, checking her readings twice before responding. Yes, Commander. 847 life forms. They match the profile of the species our intelligence division calls humans. Humans. Velatros had heard of them during intelligence briefings. A recently spacefaring species from a planet called Earth. The Covenant had been monitoring their radio transmissions for decades, but had never made formal contact. The consensus was that humans were too primitive to be worth the effort. They had barely left their home system and possessed technology that seemed laughable compared to Covenant standards. Open a channel, Velatros ordered. Standard first contact protocols. After a moment, the communication officer nodded. Channel open, Commander. Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander Velatros of the Covenant Alliance Warship Harmonious Judgment. We have detected your distress and offer assistance. Please respond. Static filled the bridge for several long seconds. Then a voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in what the translation software identified as English. Harmonious Judgment. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Coalition ship Indomitable. We appreciate the offer, but we're managing our situation. Velatros blinked in confusion. Managing their situation? The sensor data showed a ship that should have been evacuated hours ago. Commander Chen, our scans indicate your vessel has sustained critical damage. Your life support systems are failing. We can provide rescue and medical assistance. Another pause. Then Chen's voice returned, carrying what the translation software labeled as amusement. That's kind of you, Commander, but we've got this under control. We're running repairs now and should have primary systems back online in about 48 hours. Repairs? Velatros turned to his sensor officer. Confirm the status of their repair capabilities. The officer's tentacles moved rapidly across her console. Commander, I'm detecting movement on the hull. It appears several of their crew members are performing extravehicular activities. They're using handheld welding equipment on the hull breaches. In that damaged ship? Their suits must be barely functional. Correct, sir. I'm reading multiple failures in their environmental suits. Oxygen levels are below recommended safety standards. Thermal regulation is compromised. By all standards, those crew members should not be outside the ship. Velatros felt a chill run through his body. What kind of species performed repairs in such conditions? Commander Chen, please reconsider. Your crew is in danger. Allow us to evacuate them to safety. Negative judgment, Chen replied, her voice firm. The Indomitable is our ship. We don't abandon her, and we definitely don't abandon each other. We'll be fine. Over the next several hours, Velatros watched in growing disbelief as the human crew continued their impossible repair work. His sensors picked up their communications, and the translation software struggled with phrases like jury-rigging and creative problem-solving. More disturbing was the fact that the humans were singing while they worked. Actual songs, while repairing a dying ship in the void of space. "Commander," his science officer reported, "I've completed the initial analysis of the damage patterns on the human vessel. The weapons signatures match Vrex pirate raiders." Velatros felt his blood run cold. The Vrex were one of the most dangerous pirate factions in known space. Their ships were fast, heavily armed, and their crews were utterly ruthless. Even Covenant vessels avoided confronting them without superior numbers. How many Vrex ships attacked them? Based on the weapons patterns and tactical analysis, I estimate at least 8 vessels, possibly more. 8 Vrex ships against one primitive human vessel. The humans shouldn't have survived at all, yet here they were, not just alive but refusing rescue and singing while they patched their broken ship together with tools that belonged in a museum. Velatros stared at the image on his screen. The human ship looked like it had been chewed up and spit out by something massive and angry, but its crew refused to give up. For the first time in his long career, Fleet Commander Velatros realized that perhaps his sensors were not showing him the complete picture. There was something about these humans that numbers and data could not capture, something that made absolutely no sense at all. Dr. Mirakin adjusted her sensory stalks as she reviewed the data streaming in from the continuous scans of the human vessel. As the chief xenopsychologist aboard the Harmonious Judgment, she had studied hundreds of species across the galaxy. She understood prey behavior, predator behavior, and everything in between, but these humans were giving her a headache. "This makes no sense," she muttered to herself, rewinding the audio feed for the 3rd time. Fleet Commander Velatros had assigned her a simple task: analyze the human crew's psychological state and predict their behavior patterns. Standard procedure for first contact situations. After 72 hours of observation, Mirakin had more questions than answers. The first anomaly was their communication patterns. Most species in crisis situations became either silent and focused or panicked and chaotic. The humans did neither. They talked constantly. They made jokes. Actual jokes, while their ship was falling apart around them. She played back one conversation between 2 human engineers working on a damaged power conduit. The translation software labeled them as Rodriguez and Kim. "Hey Kim, hand me that wrench." "Which one?" "The big one. Or as I like to call it, my persuasion tool." "You mean the one you hit things with until they work?" "Exactly." Engineering at its finest, both humans had laughed. While surrounded by exposed electrical systems and wearing barely functional protective gear. Mirakin had run the audio through her analysis programs 5 times to ensure the translation was correct. It was even more disturbing was their relationship with inanimate objects. The humans talked to their equipment. They gave names to their weapons, their tools, even sections of the ship itself. Mirakin had documented 17 separate instances of crew members patting the walls and saying things like, "Hang in there, girl, or don't give up on us now." This kind of pack bonding with non-living things was unprecedented in her research. Most species formed social bonds with their own kind, sometimes with other species, occasionally with simple animals. But machines? It defied every psychological model she knew. Then there was the hierarchy problem. Covenant military structures were rigid and clear. Officers gave orders. Enlisted personnel followed them. The humans seemed to have ranks and a command structure, but they ignored it whenever they felt like it. Lower-ranked crew members volunteered for the most dangerous tasks to protect injured officers. Engineers argued with their commanders about the best repair strategies. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, and somehow this chaos produced results. Mirakin brought her findings to Fleet Commander Velatros in his private office. "Commander, I need to show you something," she said, pulling up a tactical display. "I've been analyzing the damage patterns on the human ship more closely. I wanted to understand what they survived." "And?" Velatros prompted. "And I discovered something that doesn't match any survival scenario in my database. The Indomitable was ambushed 3 weeks ago by Vrex pirates. 8 ships, as we suspected, but I've analyzed the debris field data from their navigational logs." She highlighted several points on the display. "These impact signatures show Vrex vessel destruction. 2 Vrex ships were rammed, deliberately, at high speed. The humans used their own ship as a weapon after they ran out of ammunition. Velatros stared at the screen in silence. Ramming was a tactic of absolute desperation. It almost always resulted in the destruction of both vessels. No sane commander would order it unless there was literally no other option. How did they survive? He finally asked. Near as I can determine, luck and what the humans call stubbornness. After ramming 2 vessels, they salvaged Vrex weapons from the debris and fought their way out. They've been limping through space ever since, trying to get home. They won, Velatros said quietly. 8-to-1 odds against Vrex pirates, and they won. That's not the strangest part, Commander. Mirakin pulled up another display. Watch this. The video feed showed the interior of the human ship. A memorial wall covered one section of corridor, displaying faces and names. Human crew members stopped there regularly, touching the images, speaking to them. 143 casualties, Mirakin explained. The humans hold ceremonies for their dead. They tell stories about them. They promise to get the ship home for them. It's like they're still part of the crew somehow. Grief is common among social species, Velatros observed. Yes, but look at what happens next. The video continued. A human female stopped at the wall, touched a photo, and whispered something. Then she turned away and went straight to an engineering station where she worked for the next 18 hours without stopping. No break, no sleep, just work. They turn grief into motivation, Mirakin said. Every species I've studied processes loss by withdrawing to recover. Humans do the opposite. They push harder. They work longer. They refuse to stop because stopping would mean admitting defeat, and defeat would mean their lost crewmates died for nothing. Velatros felt something he rarely experienced. Uncertainty. What do you recommend, Doctor? I recommend we watch them closely, Commander. The humans survived an encounter that should have killed them all. They're keeping a mortally wounded ship operational through sheer determination, and they're doing it while making jokes and singing songs. Your point? Mirakin's sensory stalks drooped slightly. My point is that every psychological model I have says they should have given up by now. They should be traumatized, broken, barely functional. Instead, they're laughing and fixing their ship with spare parts and improvisation. Either humans are completely insane, or they understand something about survival that the rest of the galaxy doesn't. At that moment, the bridge alarm sounded. Velatros rushed from his office with Mirakin close behind. Report, he commanded. 6 vessels approaching at high speed, the sensor officer announced. Vrex signatures. They're heading straight for the human ship. Velatros felt his stomachs twist. The Vrex had sent a revenge fleet. The Indomitable was in no condition to fight. He opened a channel to Commander Chen. Commander Chen, 6 Vrex vessels are approaching your position. We can provide escort to... We see them, Commander, Chen interrupted. Her voice was calm, too calm. Thank you for the warning. You should probably move to a safe distance. You cannot fight them in your condition. Probably not, Chen agreed. But we're going to try anyway. Indomitable out, Mirakin looked at Velatros with wide eyes. They're going to fight. They're actually going to fight. They're going to die, Velatros corrected grimly, but even as he said it, he found himself wondering. The humans had survived impossible odds once already. They had turned grief into strength and damage into determination. They talked to their ship like it was alive and trusted each other with a depth that seemed almost supernatural. Maybe, just maybe, the humans knew something about fighting that the sensors couldn't measure. Maybe impossible wasn't a word in their vocabulary. Fleet Commander Velatros made a decision that would probably end his career. He opened a priority channel to Commander Chen. Commander Chen, I request permission to board the Indomitable before the Vrex arrive. I need to understand your crew's capabilities. There was a long pause. Then Chen's voice returned with what sounded like surprise. You want to come aboard now? We're kind of a mess here, Commander. I am aware. Permission requested. Well, I can't stop you. But watch your head. We've got exposed pipes everywhere. And the artificial gravity is acting weird in sections 7 through 12. Also ignore the sparks. We're working on that. 30 minutes later, Velatros stood in the docking bay of the Indomitable with Dr. Mirakin and 2 security officers. The moment the airlock opened, he understood what Chen had meant by a mess. The human ship was barely holding together. Exposed wiring ran along walls and ceilings. Temporary patches covered holes in the bulkheads. The lighting flickered constantly. The air smelled of burned metal, recycled atmosphere, and something the translation software identified as coffee. Commander Chen met them at the airlock. She was shorter than Velatros had expected, barely reaching his chest. Her uniform was stained with grease and what looked like dried blood. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but those eyes were sharp and alert. She extended her hand in what the cultural database identified as a handshake. "Welcome aboard the Indomitable, Commander. Sorry about the state of things. We've been a bit busy." Velatros carefully grasped her hand with one of his own. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you for allowing this visit, Commander Chen. Call me Sarah. We're not big on formality when the ship is falling apart." She gestured down a corridor. "I'll give you the tour, but we need to make it quick. The Vrex will be here in about 4 hours." As they walked through the ship, Velatros cataloged everything he saw with growing horror and fascination. Human crew members worked everywhere. Some welded patches onto walls. Others crawled through access tunnels barely wide enough for their bodies. Many showed signs of injury, bandages, limps, exhaustion, but none of them stopped working. They passed a sleeping area where dozens of humans lay on the floor, sleeping in shifts because the actual quarters were exposed to vacuum. In another section, a group of engineers argued loudly about the best way to reroute power from the damaged reactor. The argument seemed angry, but Sarah just smiled. That's Peterson and her team. They're brilliant. They just need to yell at each other for a while to figure out the right answer. "This is normal?" Mirakin asked, her sensory stalks quivering. "For engineers? Yeah. They're passionate about their work." They reached a memorial wall and Sarah stopped. Her expression changed, becoming more serious. She touched one of the photos gently. "Lieutenant Marcus Webb, best pilot I ever knew, took a direct hit protecting the engineering section during the Vrex attack. He gave us time to get the shields back online." She touched another photo. "Ensign Lisa Park, medical officer, stayed with the wounded in the damaged medical bay until we could evacuate them. The bay decompressed before we could reach her." Sarah touched photo after photo, speaking each name. 143 names. 143 stories. When she finished, she turned to Velatros. "That's why we don't give up, Commander. Because they didn't give up. And we're going to get this ship home for them." Before Velatros could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A voice came over the intercom. "Reactor coolant leak in Section 9. All personnel evacuate immediately." Sarah's expression hardened. "That's not good. That section contains the main coolant pumps. If we lose those, the reactor goes critical." "Then your crew should evacuate," Velatros said firmly. Sarah was already running. Velatros and his team followed her to Section 9, where they found a group of human engineers staring at a sealed door. Radiation warnings flashed red on nearby panels. "What's the situation?" Sarah demanded. A young male engineer, his uniform identified him as Chen as well, possibly a relation, responded quickly. "Manual seal failure on coolant line 3. We're losing coolant fast. If it reaches 0, the reactor overheats. We have maybe 10 minutes. What do you need?" Someone has to go in there and close the manual valve. "But the radiation levels are already lethal. Any protective suit will fail after about 2 minutes of exposure." Sarah nodded. "How long to reach the valve and close it?" 90 seconds if you run. So whoever goes in has 30 seconds to get back out before the suit fails." "Commander, you can't," young Chen started. "I'm not. You 3 are." Sarah pointed at 3 engineers. "Rodriguez, Kim, and Davis, you're the fastest runners we have. You go in together." Rodriguez closes the valve while Kim and Davis watch the radiation monitors. The moment that valve is closed, all 3 of you run. Don't wait. Don't check anything else. Just run. "Sir?" "Yes, sir," they responded in unison. Velatros watched in frozen horror as the 3 humans put on protective suits that everyone knew would not provide adequate protection. They checked each other's seals, made jokes about who would buy drinks when they got home, and then entered the contaminated section. The waiting was terrible. Sarah stared at the radiation monitors, counting seconds under her breath. Mirakin's sensory stalks had curled tight against her head, a sign of extreme distress. Velatros wanted to look away but couldn't. 90 seconds passed. Then 95. At 100 seconds, the radiation alarm stopped. The coolant leak had been sealed. At 112 seconds, 3 humans stumbled out of the contaminated section. Their suits were degrading, showing dark patches where the radiation had burned through. "The humans pulled off their helmets, coughing and gasping. We did it!" Rodriguez announced, then immediately bent over and vomited. "Medical team to Section 9. Sarah called calmly. Rodriguez, Kim, Davis, sit down before you fall down. Good work. Commander, Kim said weakly, I think I saw my skeleton in there. That's the radiation talking. You'll be fine, will they? Velatros demanded. They were exposed to lethal doses. Sarah helped Rodriguez sit against a wall. They got what we call totally manageable radiation poisoning. They'll be sick for a few days, but they'll recover. Our medical officer has experience with this kind of thing. You have experience with your crew receiving lethal radiation doses? We're from Earth, Commander. Our home planet has been trying to kill us since we crawled out of the oceans. We learned to be tough because we had to be. She smiled grimly. Our medical technology isn't as fancy as yours, but we're very good at keeping people alive when they probably shouldn't be. At that moment, Velatros understood something profound. The humans didn't see impossible situations the way other species did. Where his people saw certain death, humans saw a problem to be solved. Where logic dictated surrender, human stubbornness demanded victory. The sensor data had been accurate. The human ship was falling apart. Their weapons were primitive. Their technology was outdated, but the sensors couldn't measure courage. They couldn't quantify determination. They couldn't calculate the power of a species that refused to accept defeat, even when defeat was the only logical outcome. The Vrex were coming. The Indomitable was barely functional. By all reasonable analysis, the humans were about to die, but Velatros was starting to suspect that humans didn't care much about reasonable analysis. Fleet Commander Velatros stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as the Vrex fleet approached. He had returned to his own ship briefly to give orders, then come back to observe what he expected to be a massacre. What he witnessed instead was organized chaos that somehow resembled a battle plan. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the center of her bridge, which was barely more functional than the rest of the ship. Two of her command consoles were completely dark. A third sparked occasionally, requiring a crew member to hit it with a wrench. The main view screen flickered between clear images and static. None of this seemed to bother Chen at all. All hands, this is the commander, she announced over the ship's intercom. The Vrex are back and they brought friends. They think we're easy prey. They thought that 3 weeks ago too. Let's remind them why that was a mistake. All crew to battle stations. The response that came back over the intercom channels made Velatros's translator struggle. Humans were shouting, cheering, and making what appeared to be aggressive promises about what they would do to the Vrex. This was not the response of a crew facing certain death. Commander Chen, Velatros said carefully, your ship cannot survive this engagement. Please allow us to provide escort to... With respect, Commander, we didn't survive the first attack by running away. We survived by hitting them so hard they didn't know what happened. Sarah pulled up a tactical display. Besides, we've got a few tricks they won't expect, such as... Sarah's smile was predatory. We've been drifting in this area for 3 weeks. We had time to prepare the battlefield. Lieutenant Hayes, show our guest what we did with all that spare time. A young officer highlighted several points on the tactical display. We used the ship's fabrication systems to create proximity mines from spare parts. They're not fancy, but they don't need to be. We've placed them in a debris field about 20,000 kilometers from here. We've also been venting damaged fuel pods and positioning them throughout the area. Velatros stared at the display. You turned the entire region into a trap. We're good at improvising, Sarah said. Now we just need to make the Vrex angry enough to chase us into it. The Vrex fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 6 warships, each twice the size of the Indomitable and bristling with weapons. A communication channel opened automatically, and a Vrex commander appeared on the view screen. The reptilian alien's scales glistened under harsh lighting, and its teeth were visible in what was clearly meant to be a threatening display. Human vessel, you destroyed 2 of our ships and cost us valuable salvage. We have come to collect compensation. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Sarah's expression didn't change. Vrex vessel, you attacked us first. We defended ourselves, you lost. Now you're back with more friends because you can't handle your own failures. That's embarrassing for you. The translator software struggled with the Vrex commander's response, finally settling on several versions of profanity. You dare mock us? We will tear your ship apart and scatter your bodies across space. You tried that already. It didn't work out well for you. Maybe you should try a different strategy, like running away. That seems more your speed. The Vrex commander roared and cut the connection. Immediately, all 6 Vrek ships opened fire. All power to forward shields, Sarah commanded. Helm, get us moving toward the debris field. Best speed on maneuvering thrusters. Maneuvering thrusters only, Velatros asked. What about your main engines? Don't have any. Used the last of our engine fuel 3 days ago. But maneuvering thrusters will do? Sarah watched the tactical display as Vrek's weapons fire hammered their shields. Engineering, how are those shields holding? Shields at 60% and dropping, came the response. We've diverted life support from sections 7 through 15 to boost shield power. Good. Keep it up. The Indomitable crawled through space, weapons fire exploding against its shields with each passing second. Velatros did quick calculations in his head. At their current speed, it would take 40 minutes to reach the debris field. The shields would fail long before that. Commander Chen, this is suicide, he said quietly. Probably, she agreed, but we're going to make it count. The human crew worked with frantic efficiency. Damage control teams rushed to repair systems as fast as they failed. Engineers rerouted power constantly, stealing from one system to feed another. Pilots flying the ship's few remaining fighters launched from the damaged hangar bay, their small craft darting around the massive Rex vessels like insects annoying predators. Fighters are away, reported the tactical officer. They're drawing fire from 2 of the Vrek ships. Good. That gives us breathing room. Sarah studied the display. Helm, vent atmosphere from the damaged sections on the port side. Use it for additional maneuvering thrust. Velatros watched as the humans deliberately opened their ship to vacuum, using the explosive decompression as a propulsion system. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was completely against every rule of spaceship operation he had ever learned. The Indomitable picked up speed slightly. Not much, but enough. The Vrek's fleet followed, confident in their advantage. They didn't notice the debris field ahead until the first mine detonated. One Vrek ship took the blast directly on its bow, shields flaring. Before it could recover, a human fighter pilot deliberately crashed into the damaged section, his small craft exploding like a shaped charge. The Vrek ship's forward shields collapsed. Lieutenant Ramirez just scored a direct hit, the tactical officer reported, his voice subdued. He didn't eject. He gave us an opening, Sarah said. Don't waste it. Target that ship's exposed bow. Fire everything we have. The Indomitable's remaining weapons concentrated fire on the damaged Vrek's vessel. Kinetic rounds and missiles streaked across space. The Vrek ship's armor held for several seconds, then failed. Secondary explosions ripped through its hull. 1 down, Sarah announced. 5 to go. But the cost was already high. 2 more human fighters were destroyed by Vrek's point defense systems. The Indomitable's shields were at 30% and dropping fast. And they were still 20 minutes from the heart of the debris field where the real trap waited. Velatros made his decision. He opened a channel to his own ship. This is Fleet Commander Velatros to Harmonious Judgment. Engage the Vrek's fleet. Authorization code Alpha 773. His communications officer's face appeared on his personal display, showing confusion. Sir, we are under strict orders to maintain neutrality and— Neutrality be damned. Velatros roared. I will not stand by and watch brave souls die while I do nothing. Engage the enemy. The Harmonious Judgment dropped its stealth systems and opened fire. Its advanced weapons tore into the nearest Vrek's ship, shields collapsing under the unexpected assault. The Vrek's fleet scattered, suddenly facing 2 opponents instead of 1 helpless target. Sarah looked at Velatros with surprise. You just violated about a dozen regulations, didn't you? Probably more than that, he admitted. But regulations mean nothing if we lack the courage to do what is right. Sarah's grin was fierce. Welcome to the fight, Commander. Let's finish this. The battle became a chaotic dance of destruction. The Harmonious Judgment's superior firepower evened the odds, while the Indomitable's impossible tactics kept the Vreks off balance. Human fighters sacrificed themselves to create openings. Covenant weapons exploited those openings with precision strikes. And through it all, the battered human ship refused to die. When another Vrek ship exploded, Sarah raised her fist in triumph. 2 down. 4 to go. But Velatros saw the readouts. The Indomitable had maybe 10 minutes before complete system failure. The humans were literally dying to achieve victory. And somehow, impossibly, they might actually win. The battle raged for another 37 minutes. To Fleet Commander Velatros, it felt like hours. Every second brought new impossibilities as the human crew of the Indomitable refused to accept what sensors and logic told them was inevitable defeat. When the ship's remaining main weapon systems failed, human engineers crawled through damaged conduits to manually reroute power. When ammunition ran out for the kinetic weapons, they loaded the tubes with anything metal they could find. Spare parts, damaged equipment, even personal items from crew quarters. One human engineer cheerfully announced over the intercom that he had just fired his collection of vintage motorcycle parts at a wrecked ship. Shields at 5%. The tactical officer called out, "We can't take another direct hit." Commander Sarah Chen didn't even blink. "Then we don't get hit. Helm, rotate ship to present our damaged sections to the enemy. Those areas are already destroyed. No point letting them shoot our functional parts." The Indomitable spun slowly, presenting its worst damage to the Vrex fleet. Weapons fire tore through sections that were already open to space, passing harmlessly through the ship without causing additional critical damage. It was the tactical equivalent of a boxer with a broken arm deliberately using that arm to block punches. "Insane," Velatros muttered. "Brilliant, but insane." "We prefer creative," Sarah replied. The Harmonious Judgment destroyed a third Vrex ship with a concentrated barrage of plasma fire. But even the advanced Covenant warship was taking damage now. The Vrex had recovered from their initial surprise and were coordinating their attacks more effectively. "We need to end this soon," Velatros said, watching his ship's status reports. "My vessel can withstand perhaps another 10 minutes of this punishment." Agreed. Sarah pulled up the tactical display, studying the positions of the remaining 3 Vrex ships. Her eyes narrowed as she calculated something. "Lieutenant Hayes, show me the fuel pod positions again." The display updated, showing dozens of damaged fuel pods scattered throughout the debris field. Velatros had almost forgotten about them in the chaos of combat. "We can't detonate them remotely," Hayes reported. "The trigger systems were too damaged. We'd need to hit them with weapons fire or ram them," Sarah finished. She straightened and took a deep breath. "Open a channel to the crew." When the channel opened, she spoke clearly and calmly. "All hands, this is Commander Chen. We're going to use ramming speed one more time. I know we're all tired. I know we've lost people. But we're going to finish this the way we started, by hitting them harder than they can hit us. Engineering, give me everything you've got left. Helm, plot a course directly through the fuel pod cluster toward the center Vrex ship." "Commander," the helm officer said softly, "at our current speed, that's going to take 40 minutes. We'll be a sitting target. Then I guess they better not hit us." Sarah smiled grimly. "All power to forward shields. Everything else is secondary." Velatros understood what she was planning. The Indomitable would crawl toward the Vrex fleet, deliberately entering the densest concentration of fuel pods. When the humans got close enough, they would detonate the pods manually with weapons fire, turning the entire debris field into a massive explosion. At their current speed, they would be inside the blast radius when it happened. "Commander Chen, this plan will destroy your ship," Velatros said. "Maybe." Sarah's eyes were fixed on the tactical display, "but it'll definitely destroy them. Sometimes that's enough." The Indomitable began its final approach. The Vrex fleet recognized the threat and concentrated all fire on the damaged human ship. Shields that were already nearly depleted began to fail completely. Sections of the hull that had survived the entire battle finally gave way under the relentless assault. "Shields gone," a tactical reported. "We're taking direct hits on the armor." "Keep going," Sarah ordered. "Hull breaches on decks 4, 6, and 9. Seal what you can." "Keep going. Engineering reports reactor containment at critical levels." "Tell engineering to hold it together for just 5 more minutes." "Keep going." The human crew somehow kept their dying ship moving forward. Velatros watched his own tactical displays as the Indomitable crawled into position, trailing atmosphere and debris, weapon systems failing, but still advancing. 3 minutes from optimal detonation range, the starboard side of the Indomitable took a direct hit from a Vrex plasma cannon. The explosion tore through 3 decks, killing everyone in those sections instantly. The ship shuddered and listed to one side. "Compensate," Sarah called out. "Don't let us drift off course." The helm officer worked frantically. "Maneuvering thrusters on the starboard side are gone." "I can't compensate." "Then use the port thrusters to push us the other way." "Whatever it takes." Somehow, impossibly, they straightened their course. The Indomitable continued forward. 2 minutes from detonation range, another Vrex ship exploded as the Harmonious Judgment scored a direct hit on its reactor. That left 2 Vrex vessels, both now realizing the danger and trying to retreat, but they had followed the humans too far into the debris field. There was no quick escape. Optimal range in 60 seconds, Hayes announced. Weapon status? Sarah asked. We've got 1 forward cannon still functional. Everything else is offline. 1 is all we need. Sarah moved to the weapons console herself, pushing aside the injured officer stationed there. Her hands flew across the controls, targeting the cluster at coordinate 774 Mark 9. That's the densest concentration of fuel pods. 30 seconds to optimal range. Velatros opened a channel to his own ship. All Covenant vessels, emergency acceleration. Get clear of the debris field immediately. 15 seconds. The Indomitable entered optimal range. Sarah's finger hovered over the firing control. For everyone we lost. For everyone who's still fighting. For the Indomitable, she fired. The single kinetic round streaked across space and impacted a damaged fuel pod. The pod exploded. That explosion triggered the next pod. Then the next. Within 3 seconds, dozens of fuel pods detonated in a cascading chain reaction that turned the debris field into a sphere of annihilation. The 2 remaining Vrex ships tried to run. 1 almost made it. Almost. The expanding explosion caught both vessels, crushing them with overpressure and shredding them with debris traveling at relativistic speeds. The Indomitable was caught in its own trap. The explosion slammed into the ship, sending it tumbling end over end through space. Every remaining system failed at once. Power went dark. Artificial gravity cut out. Life support stopped. In the sudden silence, Sarah's voice came over the emergency channel. All hands, damage report. Slowly, reports came in from different sections of the ship. Casualties were heavy. Systems were destroyed. But humans were alive. Impossibly, incredibly, humans were still alive inside the wreck of their ship. Velatros had already ordered rescue operations. The Harmonious Judgment moved carefully through the debris field, deploying shuttles to evacuate the human survivors. When he finally reached the Indomitable's bridge, he found Sarah Chen still at her post, helping injured crew members despite the fact that she was bleeding from a head wound. The battle is over. Commander Chen, Velatros said gently. You won. Let us help you now. Sarah looked around her destroyed bridge. 94 more names would be added to the memorial wall. Her ship was beyond repair, but they had survived. Against logic, against odds, against everything that reasonable beings would consider possible, they had survived and won. Help would be good, she finally admitted, then smiled weakly. But I'm not leaving the Indomitable until everyone else is safe first. 6 weeks later, Fleet Commander Velatros stood before the Covenant High Council, presenting his report. The complete sensor data from the human engagement had been reviewed by every major military analyst in the Covenant. The conclusions were unanimous and disturbing. The humans possess no superior technology, Velatros explained. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are outdated. Their understanding of physics is adequate but not exceptional. Then how did they survive? Demanded a council member. They survived through will, Velatros said simply. Through stubbornness, creativity, courage, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Our sensors can measure weapons yield and shield strength and reactor output. But they cannot measure the human spirit. They cannot quantify determination. They cannot calculate the power of a species that looks at impossible odds and decides to fight anyway. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. We have made a grave error, Velatros continued. We dismissed humanity as primitive because their technology is behind ours. But we failed to understand that technology is only one measure of strength. Humans are dangerous not because of what they build, but because of who they are. You recommend an alliance? Another council member asked. I recommend we pray they are willing to be our friends rather than our enemies, Velatros said bluntly. Because if humanity ever turns its attention toward conquest, I do not believe anything in the known galaxy could stop them. 3 months after the battle, Commander Sarah Chen stood on a stage at Covenant Central Station. The Indomitable floated in a repair dock behind her, swarming with Covenant engineers who were rebuilding the ship with the latest technology. It was a gift, the council had said. A symbol of respect. Chen wore her dress uniform, freshly cleaned and pressed. Behind her stood the survivors of her crew. Beside her stood Fleet Commander Velatros, who had been promoted rather than court-martialed for violating neutrality. Apparently, the Council valued courage more than strict rule-following. On behalf of Earth and the Terran Coalition, Chen said into the microphone, "I accept the Covenant Alliance's offer of friendship and cooperation. We look forward to standing together, exploring together, and defending each other against any who would threaten our peoples." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "But let me be clear about something. We're not joining because we need protection. We're joining because it's better to stand together. But if anyone threatens our friends, they'll discover what your sensors couldn't measure." She gestured to her crew, scarred and battered but standing proud. "Humans are very good at holding grudges, and we're extremely creative about payback." The assembled crowd of Covenant representatives erupted in applause. They had learned the lesson written in debris fields and sensor logs across space. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't in their arsenal. It was in their spirit, and the galaxy would never be the same.